Another week and another fantastic rule set. Get your tips and tactics on the brand new Genestealer Cults in our tips and tactics, aka the dirty tips and tactics review. Spiky bits. Make sure you stay in the trenches by becoming a supporter over on Patreon and also scoring yourself some free miniature swag in the process. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out our site, spikybits.com, for all the hot hobby tutorials, news, rumors on all your favorite hobby topics. And head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content, early access videos, and more. Become a veteran of the Long War today. All right, hobby maniacs, it is go time. Now, this is, I can't even tell you how many weeks in a row we have had a tips and tactics video feature here on the channel because there's been so many rule set coming out between Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k. It's a great time for the hobby, very exciting times, but keeping us very busy here on our toes in the Beats Laboratory. Now, I spent a lot of time with this book over the weekend and really came up with a lot of things that some stuff I hadn't seen people talking about, some stuff I had seen people talking about online, but really just breaking this army down. And, you know, a lot of people are saying, hey, this is a big book. This is 105 pages. I said it was a supplement a couple times. It's not a supplement. It's a full-on codex, just like Deathwatch. Like, this is a cool precedent to see from Games Workshop. This is kind of a new thing. Like, we haven't seen rules for these guys since, you know, second edition, 40k. So you're talking literally 20-some plus years. So it's a really exciting time. Now, this video is going to be our going over basically our tips and tactics, like giving you some ideas and some pointers for how to field these guys, but basically breaking down the rules and making sure that we're all on that kind of the same page and giving you those hobby gotchas to look out for, you know, when you set up across the table or when you're playing these guys and setting up across the table with somebody there. Now, this is going to be a long video, I won't lie. Like, there's a lot of stuff to cover. I could cut it into 2 videos, but I'm not sure that's the right thing to do because there's so much material and it's so intertwined together, like you know, with all the rules referencing all these other things, and I kind of just don't want to lose the momentum, you know, while we're talking about it. So, like I do in all the videos, basically we start at the back. We don't start with the data sheets. We don't start with the detachments. I want to start in the back because the back is where the foundation is built for the whole book, right? So you've got your appendix, you've got your special rules, then we get into the psychic powers, the war gear. That builds us that foundation to talk about all the crazy formations, the crazy data sheets, and the crazy detachments, and all the tips and tricks, or dirty tricks, you could do with this crazy book. Now, let's dive right in, because this video, like I said, this video is gonna go long. So first off, I want to talk about some key points, this whole thing. A lot of these units, almost the majority of the troops and the elites, so, you know, the acolytes, from both sides, you know, you've got a whole bunch of different types. You got pretty much everything in this book that's on foot, like an infantry kind of style model. There's some way to get it +1 weapon skill. Okay. Now, there's also generally a way to get additional strength to those models as well. Now, a lot of this stuff is strength 4 base. A lot of this stuff is toughness 3 base. So it's kind of, they're basically, it's a very paper tiger-y kind of army. It's starting to sound like and kind of the opposite of how orcs are. Like, they're tough, but they're not exactly the easiest to hit, and they make up for in numbers. Whereas this is kind of the opposite. They're not as tough. They don't have the numbers, so they're a lot easier damage output. But as far as they don't have that big of an ass, basically, so to speak, right there, right. So between psychic powers, formation abilities, and not necessarily detachment, but there's ways to get these guys boosted strengths and boosted weapon skills. So for on the most part, assaulty units in this army are going to be hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s for the most part. A lot of the tricks you can do in here. Now, also, brush up on your infiltrate and scout special rules. Infiltrate allows you to roll off after you've deployed all of your normal units with your opponent, place those units out on the table, okay? They can be 18 inches away from the enemy, 12 inches if they can't draw a line of sight to them, okay? Now, many things that have infiltrate can also scout, which is another great rule you need to brush up on. Scout confers outflank. which is, you'll see here, you can actually do from the ambush rule as well. However, Scout also gives you a redeploy after you infiltrate. So there's a specific series of events. You infiltrate, you roll off for infiltrators, then you roll off to Scout. So once you infiltrate, then you can also scout the same models, which is redeploy 6 inches for infantry, monsters, creatures, and I think there's one other restriction. Basically everything else can redeploy within 12. It cannot put you within 12 of the enemy, however, and you cannot assault the first turn if you go first turn. So those are some caveats to keep in mind. So brush up on those rules. The cult ambush cycle, there's a specific cycle to basically how you have to do this stuff. And in a specific order. Like you can't just, unless your models have infiltrate or have a way to kind of deploy from reserves, you're gonna have to set them up on the table. They can't just like boogeyman out of nowhere without having infiltrate or some other way to come on from ongoing reserves. So that's an important thing to remember as well. The Genestealers cannot be joined by anything except for the Patriarch. So that's another important thing to remember. And Zealot. Zealot's a rule that you're going to see in here a lot, and a lot of people mess it up. Zealot is basically a better version of Fearless, which is incredible to believe that that's even possible. So it's basically Fearless plus the first turn of any assault, you get to reroll all missed hits. You cannot do it in subsequent turns, but like I said, these guys are all about damage output and not so much about dead ass. So that is my key points for remembering when you're going over all the rules in here. Oh, and another, I can't even believe I didn't mention this. There's specific rules for coming out of reserves. You can never assault. You can never come off the board edge and immediately assault something. So no matter what it says in here, like about movement and things like that, you can never launch an assault unless it specifically says you can, like the number 6 right here. That's the only way you can do it. So there's very specific things to coming out of reserve, so you might want to brush up on those rules as well. And that gets you to the baseline you need to be to play these guys right here. So first off, you've got the cult ambush rule. And that basically reads that any units with this special rule, when they arrive by reserves, are ongoing reserves. Remember, you can't just arbitrarily be like, yo, I'm just not going to set these guys up. Well, why are you not going to set them up? Well, I don't feel like it. Remember, you have to start with a certain amount of models on the table or you lose the game. So don't trick yourself out and accidentally Necron phase out your whole army, right? So if any of them are coming in from reserves or from ongoing reserves, you can, instead of deploying them normally as they would arrive, you can roll on this chart and do what it says, basically, which is kind of cool. And then conversely, instead of moving in the movement phase, any unit with a special rule that is not within 6 inches of an enemy model, so they can be blocked out, it's probably not going to work in combat, but just keep that in mind, can bust back into ongoing reserve, reappear the next turn using this chart as well. So very cool stuff right there. They also have some other stuff like unquestioning loyalty, which the Promise has. Automatically passes Lookout Sir attempts and can even make Lookout Sir rolls when in a challenge, which is really interesting. You don't normally see that. So it's an important mechanic. When you don't normally see something, you know there's something going on there. Warlord traits and allies. Allies of convenience with Guard and Tyranids. Very important because that's pretty neat. That can get you a lot of psychic powers or psychic dice. That can also get you a lot of firepower in the form of, you know, Paskin and Lehman Rust or some Wyverns or something like that. They would become the Apocalypse with Chaos, but there's a lot of Chaos Renegades and Chaos Cult opportunities out there, aka the Purge, to get you some really dope Wyverns, and you don't even have to keep them near them. You can keep them over in the board edge. You got Come the Apocalypse, and you got, you know, 2 different flavors of cults. How cool would that be, right? The Warlord traits table is actually really exciting. There's ways to reroll it with the detachment or the Curion, whichever you want to call it. You can get 2 rolls, or you can get 1 roll and a reroll, which is pretty neat. So you got a 1 in 3 chance to get the Ambush Leader special rule, which everybody's going to want. When using a Cult Ambush special rule, your Warlord and any unit has joined do not roll, and you can choose a result to apply instead. May I introduce you to the Assaulting as soon as you appear rule. That one seems pretty good. Okay, but I digress. So if you get 2 rolls on here, you basically have a reroll chance. So you have a 1 in 3 chance to get that one. So if you're playing in a 3-round tournament, chances are that one of those rounds, you will be able to dictate the terms of battle for your Warlord and his Billy Badass unit. So that's kind of cool to see. Warlord has Stealth special rule. Very cool to see. We'll talk about Stealth and Shrouded in depth here as we move forward through this tips and tactics video. Friendly units with Genestealer Cult faction have the counterattack special rule while they are at 12 inches. That's kind of cool. This one here is move through cover in addition to Warlord and His unit never suffers the penalty to initiative for charging through difficult terrain, something that Genestealers suffer from, and it's always been a problem for them. They don't have flesh hooks, which doesn't give them offensive grenades, but the rest of the army, for the most part, does have them. The blasting charges count as them, so that's something to keep in mind there. Warlord has the It Will Not Die special rule. Models in your Warlord's detachment can use his leadership in place of their own. That could come in handy, but a lot of stuff in here basically can get foe fearless, so that's kind of cool to see too. And then of course ambush leader. Now let's go over the cult ambush rules. A lot of people have seen these. They were spoiled like early on, but there's some really good results here. Number one, of course, is you just come on like normal, no big deal. Number two is basically your outflank, same exact wording, except for it's not outflank. Number three is a line in wait, directly ported over from Age of Sigmar. If you can set up an ambushing unit anywhere within 9 inches of an enemy model, or 6 inches if they don't have line of sight. Conversely, number 4 is you can do it more than 6 inches away from an enemy model. And 5 is a deadly trap. You can immediately make a bonus shooting attack with it as if it were a shooting phase. Then these bonus shooting attacks do not cause morale checks, but they do have the penning special rule. But if you don't shoot, you get to, or if you don't have any ranged weapons, you can instead choose to run in the movement phase. So you're not running in the shooting phase, you're running in the movement phase. And it specifically says in the cult ambush special rule that you cannot perform any more movement in the movement phase when you come on using this. You can, however, run. There's no restriction for that. So theoretically, you can run, and you can also run in the movement phase over here as well. So that's kind of interesting to see, right? Two different, that's basically like you're getting almost a full D6. It's technically, well, 2D6. So you're getting an average run there, which is really neat to see. All right, and then they came from below. We talked about that. Units, unlike other units with infiltrate or arrive from reserves, the ambushing unit can charge in their first turn, or on the turn they arrive from reserves. Wow. That's pretty powerful, because there's a lot of units in here that I would not want to get charged by, for sure. Now, the war gear of the cults is pretty wide open and varied, and there's a lot of new stuff in here. A lot of new stuff. A lot of stuff that would take a lot of time to talk about. We're going to try to get through it as quickly as we can, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. First off, the clearance incinerator is a template. It's basically a heavy flamer, but it's torn. That's cool. I like that. Demolition charge. We've seen that in the past with guard. Still works the same. Assault 1, large blast 1 use only. However, it's 6 inch. So you're rolling the dice there that whoever threw it might get it exploded back in their face. Grenade launchers pretty standard. Lemur's turret weapons still standard. Mining lasers. There's 2 different types. The guys on foot only have access to the mining laser at 24 inches. The guys, or the one vehicle, the Goliath, the Rock Crusher, gets the heavy mining laser that's 36 inch range. So last cannon, but not quite a last cannon, you know what I mean? Mortar's the same, needle pistol's the same. Then we got the seismic cannon weapons. They kind of work the reverse of kind of how the Tech Marine stuff does. Those get more powerful the longer distance. These are more powerful the closest distance. Remember, it's mining, they're all up in the face. So seismic cannon, it works much better at the 12-inch band, strength 8, AP 3, heavy 2 resonance, and the heavy one also works way better, an extra shot. And the resonance basically gives you two wound rolls and armor pen rolls of 6 made with this weapon are always resolved at AP 1. So it gives you the bonus to armor pen, and of course AP 1 pretty much gets through the majority of armor out there. Web weapons, something new, well actually not new, they're actually pretty old to be honest. They basically work off the AP, the AP is the strength, or is it the toughness? I forget. Let's see, so it goes off the strength of the model. So the lower strength of the model, the easier it is. They can't like fight their way out of it like something that's only strength 3, it becomes AP 3. So it kind of makes sense, like armored stuff that's strong doesn't have a problem with this, but anything that's smaller is going to have a problem with this web pistol. And most of the sergeants and stuff can get it. There's a web pistol and a web burr. And like I said, the cocoon special rule, we just talked about that. Now, bone sword's pretty much the same, but they're strength of user. So remember, there's ways to boost strength in here. So you're going to get a lot of stuff that has strength 5, strength 6 with this life drain ability that could confer instant death if you roll a 6. The heavy rock cutter is pretty interesting. I like it, but I'm not sure it's worth it over some of these other weapons. It's negative ×2 strength, AP2. It has the snip special roll, which is a separate toughness test for each wound suffered or be removed from play. Just straight up removed from play. That's a pretty devastating effect. But why take that when you can get stuff like the Rock Saw that's armor bane? I mean, this is just going to make a mockery of anything it touches, regardless of if it's removed from play. There's squads that can get 4 of these in the squad. So I feel like I'm like, some of these are good, but some of these, it's just kind of, for 5 points more, I feel like I'm going with this thing right here. And then the heavy rock drill is very, very similar too. It's unwieldy, but let's see, if you roll you can make the single smash attack. It's strength 10 AP1. Like I said, I think the rock saw is the best way to go. I think you're going to see a lot of these right here. Lash whip and bone sword combo, nothing new there. The metamorph weapons, something interesting. The what is it? I forget the unit that has that. It's one of the acolyte boxes, but they're kind of cool. The one thing that you need to note about this is it says a model equipped with this weapon, so it just has to be equipped with this weapon. These guys, for the most part, still have rending claws, so they can still use the rending claws. And if they're equipped with these weapons, they just get these bonuses. They come stock, I think, with the Talon, which is Scythe, which just means it has a +1 bonus weapon skill just right off the bat. So if you're striking with your rending claws, you have +1 weapon skill just because you have that right there. It's also melee, so you're getting +1 attack for 2 close combat weapons, rending claw on this thing, but you don't have to use the profile of this weapon because of the way it's worded. A model equipped with. It doesn't have to attack with. So this is a very important note to make right here. When you kind of look at them, you're like, I don't know about these guys, but then it starts, well, that's kind of a cool mechanic. I didn't think about that. So now you don't have to spend the extra points to take the cult icon to get the +1 weapon skill. They're basically getting it for freezies right here. Again, if you want to switch it out with the lash, +3 bonus initiative for freezies, just right off the bat with the rending claw. You know what I mean? Same over here, +2 strength. There's all sorts of ways to get strengths and weapon skills in here. You just have to kind of go digging to get on. Patriarch's Claws, nothing new there. Power Hammer, these guys, the Airbrushing comes stock with the picks, which are +2 strength, AP3 unwieldy. They could get the Power Hammer upgrade for free, +3 strength, AP2, all sorts of special rules right there. These guys are only going to get 3 attacks each because both of these are two-handed, or excuse me, I lied. This is two-handed, this one isn't, but it is unwieldy. Rending Claws, nothing new. Scythe and Talons, again, nothing new right there. We've seen that stuff a million times with the Tyrannus. Now that we've gotten through all the war gear, or all the special rules, they have special issue war gear. Blasting charges, like I said, are your assault grenades. Most squads have them, so it's important to remember. The cult icon gives you the plus weapon skill. It's generally a 10-point upgrade for most of these squads. Genestealer Familiar, I'm not convinced on this thing. It's just basically your standard familiar with 2 additional strength 4 attacks, AP dash. The Sacred Cult Banner, friendly units with the Genestealer Cult faction within 12 inches get Furious Charge. That's the Icon Ward guy, basically has that, but it also confers something else. Toxin Inject to the Primus pretty much has this. It just basically gives them the poison special rule. Okay, cool. Cult Vehicle Equipment, this is really interesting stuff. So you got a cache of demo charges. They're one use only. They work just the same as a normal demo charge, except for you kind of have to roll it almost like a plasma cannon. On the roll of 1, the vehicle suffers a further strength 8 AP2 hit after any initial damage has been resolved. So it's kind of like worse than gets hot, but again, these are kind of cool. Like, they could clear out some space. I don't know if they're necessary, but they're definitely that cool factor. Then we got the Drill Dozer Blade, and let me tell you what, Drill Dozer Blade is definitely the same exact version with a little 7th edition tweak update as the old Death Roller for the Orcs used to be for the Battle Wagon. Man, this has the opportunity or potential to do a lot of work. Now, there's not a whole lot of ways to take the Rock Crushers themselves. There's a couple formations that take them, or you basically have to purchase them on your standard Force Org chart. There's no ways to infiltrate them that I've been able to find. So there's kind of that. Like, if you can infiltrate this thing and run up the sides on somebody's line and just tank shot the crap out of things, that would be super hilarious, but that's not quite the way they work. However, basically, they get to do their vehicle ram attack, which is a form of tank shot, so don't forget that. It adds an extra d6 to the strength of the hit. If the ram causes a penetrating hit, it adds +1 to the vehicle damage table. So basically, it's kind of like a free AP bonus right there. if you get through. So you got to get through first. So the front armor of this thing is 12. So the majority, it's going to be doing that. So you half it down to 6 because you're going to be ramming stuff. You get your D6, average roll of 3. So now you're up to 9. Plus 1 for being a tank. Now you're up to 10. Then you roll armor pen. So on average, you're going to be throwing a strength 10 attack plus 1d6 against anything you tank shot. Now, any models or anything in the way right here are going to take D3 AP2 hits. And if they try to death or glory you and they fail, they're going to take another D3 AP2 hits. So you can really start terrorizing a lot of units on the tabletop, start herding things into kind of dense population centers of models on the table for your guys to come out of cult ambush and boom, smash into. Or to get things off of objectives. These guys will just push things right off of objectives because if they stand there, they're just going to die. And they have a transport capacity of 6. So it's a lot of things to take in consideration, a lot of moving parts here. As far as the sacred relics of the cult go, I like them, but I think there's only one that you're going to see reliably on the tabletop, and that's probably the first one, the icon of Cult Ascendant. Any friendly units that have the cult faction that are within 12 inches of a model with this get Furious Charge, can reroll Foul Morale, Penning, and Fear tests, which is basically fearless. In addition, models in the same unit have +1 attack while the Baer is alive. So, oh my. There's ways to get Rage in here. There's ways to do all sorts of things. So it basically confers a foe fearless, +1 attack, and Furious Charge. So there's a lot of layers here, a lot of things that work. And this icon here is only 30 points. Not too bad for a standard, to be quite honest. Then you got some other stuff here that, we're not going to talk about because you can obviously read it right there. The dagger itself is 15 points. This Scourge is, this thing's 15 points. The Subterran Master is, 20 points. The Crouching's 20 points. And the Sword of the Vordzai is only 15 points. Like I said, you're not going to see these as prevalent, but we need to cover some other ground here and start talking about things like the Broodmind discipline, because the psychic powers in this book are actually, for once, pretty good for Tyranids. Now, a lot of the models, well, I guess just the 2 psychers, can take Biomancy, Telepathy, and of course the Broodmind discipline, which has some really good stuff here. Of course, the Primaris is basically like a watered down Paroxysm, which is no big deal. It's a cool Primaris. You can't really phone home about it or really complain about it. The Psychic Stimulus, however, I think is pretty solid. You're not going to really be like, oh, I got Psychic Stimulus if you roll it up, because it's pretty decent. So its target has a Relentless and Fleet special roll. In addition, the target can charge even if it ran during the preceding shooting phase. So now you're like, okay. That's pretty good if you got stuff on the tabletop, you're running in on things, pretty neat there. Now remember, these are allies to convenience with everything else. So you're not going to be casting psychic powers on, Tyranids, or you're not going to be casting psychic powers on Guardsmen, but you are going to be casting psychic powers on yourself. So there is that. Now, another thing too, is this a conundrum? Because the main rulebook says that you can't move anymore, but you can run. Once you arrive, during the shooting phase, you can still run. Just like if you deep strike, you can still run, remember? So, does that qualify that? I mean, that's a little bit of a conundrum there. I feel like rules is written, probably not. Or rules is written, maybe. Rules is intended, probably not. But it might open up, a little bit of a can of worms there that people might try to exploit. So be on the lookout for that one there. Pisonic Blast or Psionic Blast, whichever way you want to say it. Here in the South, we do what we want. So it's just your obligatory Strength 5 AP3 small blast. Now, if it was 10 years ago, I'd be worried about that. But these days, it's manageable. It's deal with them. Might from Beyond is a great Warp Charge 1 spell. It gives you +1 to your Strength and Rage. Like I said, there's a ton of ways to get extra attacks, extra strength, all sorts of stuff in here. These guys can straight up Mario Mushroom all over the place. I mean, you just don't want to sleep on these guys. It's almost like don't take a lot of points in your squads, because your psychic abilities, you can be casting all this stuff and just leveling everything up all off the fly. It's crazy. Mental Onslaught is basically like a Mind War power. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of it. Mind Control we might see. It's very similar to the Cabal formation special ability for Chaos, but this is a psychic power at Warp Charge 2, 24-inch range, Focus Witchfire. It doesn't have a profile, so it automatically hits. keep that in mind too. Per the new first draft FAQ from Games Workshop, if it has a weapon profile, you have to roll to hit. Things like Psychic Shriek do not. So that's kind of cool to see. It's just Warp Charge 2. Hey, I got it off. Boom. Your broadside or your Storm Surge or your Riptide is shooting your other Storm Surge, or your Storm Surge is shooting that. Yeah. So it could get pretty dirty. Centurions, killing a Centurion squad. You charge the other Centurion squad that's standing there. Very cool stuff. Telepathic Summons. This could possibly get abusive because it's an easy way to get new models on the table. They can't go infinite and summon new models because you can't get a Primus, you can't get any of the casters. But tell me another time that for 2 or 3, or actually it has to be 3, you could get 20 freaking models on the tabletop. Like, that's pretty right in itself. You need to take note of that. But being able to do it multiple times in a turn, if you have different psychers and are not in the same unit, that could get very abusive. All right, so now that we've laid the groundwork for all this stuff here, of course there's tactical objectives and things like that, but we're not going to get into all that. Let's jump to the front of the book and start talking about units. Now, I don't want to get into the Decurion yet, although it is there, but we will talk about that. Some quick things for the war gear list. Your special weapons are not what we're used to. It's only Flamer, Grenade Launcher, or Weber. You cannot purchase the Demo Charge Thrower or any, the little Rock Dozer Blade thing. That is a specific unit entry that you can only do. Remember too that the mining weapons, they only have access to the smaller non-heavy versions. The other ones are vehicle mounted. So that's kind of the big stuff there. Now, Patriarch, Magnus, and the Primus are only available in the Deathwatch Overkill box or in that separate, I think it's Brood Coven box or something, $60 retail from Games Workshop. They're not sold separately, but I'm sure you can find them broken up across the interweb there. So it's an interesting precedent how they did that. Now, as far as the models go, they're pretty decently pointed. I think you're going to see a lot of 65-point versions of this guy with the Mastery Level 2, which you can't really complain about. Now, it has a very specific special ability. Friendly units with the Genestealer Cult faction that within 12 had an Adamantite special rule, right? Adamantite will special rule. So if they're specifically targeted, they're going to be able to at least throw, an extra +1 to their dice, which is kind of cool. Over here, tons of special rules, but the one thing to note here that a lot of people might miss is that it's fearless. So when you start putting this guy in blobs of like neophytes, they become fearless too. Remember, those are basically like your guardsmen. So you take these big blocks of guardsmen, or even the acolytes, big blocks of these guys, 20 blocks, now they become fearless, and you have a psyker in there too. Pretty crazy. Now there's other ways to get that faux psychic, or that faux fearless, like the zealot special rule. But remember, it's something that you might not always have. So it's just kind of some stuff to keep in mind. Of course, you can upgrade him to Mastery Level 2 as well. It just kind of depends on what you want to do, but he is the only one that can join the Genestealer Cult, and everyone within 12 inches of his model is also fearless. So kind of keep that in mind. So if you have anybody within 12 or he's part of the squad, it's not too bad. Jumping over to the Primus, I'm kind of torn on this guy. I mean, he's got some interesting rules. Of course, he has blasting charges, which, that's something to actually check, because if he joins... How is that worded? Because I guess theoretically, because Genestealers can't be joined by anybody else but a Patriarch, which of course does not have blasting charges. So there goes my idea out the window. You saw where I was going with that one, right? Okay, so he's got the blasting charges, that's important, but anything else he would join doesn't really matter, to be quite honest. Hatred, which is something you definitely want to take note of when you're assaulting. Infiltrate, which means he auto gets to do his Cult Ambush special rule because he can just infiltrate if you so desire to do him. Then we've got the Acolyte Icon Ward, which is basically your standard bearer. He comes with that fancy Cult Banner, which already has special abilities we just talked about. Now it also has, the model itself has this Nexus of Devotion, which gives out Feel No Pain, 6-up, to anybody within 12. That's pretty good. In addition, if they already have Feel No Pain, they get a +1 to it. So those aberrants basically go from a 6-up Feel No Pain to a 5-up Feel No Pain. They have 2 wounds. They are only toughness 4, but there's some psychic powers out there, aka Biomancy, that could definitely get that, you know, adjust that pretty well for them, you know. So there's some stuff. Psychic powers are going to come in huge in a chaos cult heavy army, I feel like, right? Now, flipping to some of the meat and potatoes of this army, you're going to see a lot of these guys, the acolytes and the neophytes. The neophytes are basically your guardsmen with weapons. Your neophytes are basically orcs. They're kind of what an orc almost wishes it was, I guess, so to speak, because they're basically the same points as an orc, but they have the standard. They're not going to do a whole lot of shooting. They're kind of flip-flop there with an orc. They're flip-flopped here with an orc. You know, they're strength 4, toughness 3. They have 1 wound, but, you know, you can get the higher leadership for the acolyte leader. But here's the thing. You can have a squad up to 20 of these guys, and for every 5 models in the unit, you can have one of those sweet special weapons right here, like the rock saw for 25 points. I feel like it's a bananas investment to not take that thing. It'll get pricey for the squad, but you can take multiples of them, and even at 10, you're taking 2 of those rock saws. It's going to do work. It's got armor bane. I mean, that thing will drop Night Titans. Forget about trying to do it with Genestealer Cult. Those right there will drop Night Titans, and which we all know is a thing. You can also put them in a glass truck if you want. You can upgrade stuff here and there. They have the cold ambush. They have the return from the shadows. They have blasting charges, so they're not slowed. You know, they're going to strike in initiative order, which is a high initiative at 4. Can't ask for any better than that. That's definitely average. It's going to get you there. Now, there's no way to buff initiative in this book that I found, but there is plenty of ways to buff your weapon skill for 10 points. You can get it up to a 5. And we've seen Furious Charge handed out like candy in this book, so there's a good chance that you're going to get these guys up to strength 5. Now, again, they have 2 attacks. They have a close combat weapon. They have running costs. They have 3 attacks now. On the charge, they have 4 attacks now, right? You just saw their stats there. They're hitting on 3s. They're going to be wounding on 3s for the most part if you get them Furious Charge, which is very easy to do. Now you're just going to start blowing through with all these attacks, right? Also, there's ways to get Rage in here. So now you would be up to even more attacks. Like, these guys are dedicated assault troops. This is the first and second generation guys that are kicked out, and all they can do is really fight. They're kind of the outcasts. But they do it very well. Now, the neophyte hybrids are kind of the reverse. They're kind of the guardsmen. They're a little smarter. They can work the weaponry and things like that. Now, you can do the same thing. You can have up to 10 additional models, so you can have a total of 20. The unit may do one of the following. You can have 2 of the heavy mining weapons, which we already talked about. They can form the team, which can also take weapons from the list. So there's lots of play here. And then also, too, something of note, the mining team has 2 wounds as well. So look out for that. Don't just pick up your models. But there's ways to get models back, too, even if they die. And we'll see that here in a few minutes when we get to that special rule. So they have auto guns and they have auto pistols, but the leader is the only one with basically everything. So he gets his extra attack. So these guys have a gun and they have a pistol, but they're getting their base 1 attack in close combat, 2 if they charge. No big deal, nothing to write home about. They're decently priced, just like a guardsman. The hybrid metamorphs, they're kind of like this thing, like I'm still trying to figure out what the deal is. They're basically compulsory in some formations, but remember what I said, they come with rending claws, they come with the metamorph talent. So they basically have 3 attacks off the base right there. So you have 2 attacks, but they have 2 close combat weapons, so you're up to 3 on the charge. You got 4. If you take some of the weapons here, you get those sweet special abilities where, you know, stuff like you get a free +1 weapon skill instead of taking the cult icon for 10 points. Or you get the bonus to initiative, which is really the only way to do it with that lash mechanic in here. And it's not able to be splashed out through the whole army. So interesting stuff. Like, for just having to take these guys, they're not too bad. I don't know if I'd go out on my own to take them, but I think you're going to see them as compulsory as part of a lot of formations. So I guess if I had to rate these guys, I would say they're kind of like a C. Like, they can fit in some places, you know, on the A to B scale. The troopers are definitely Bs, because what they do it well, and you need these guys. As far as the Icon Ward, he's definitely he's a star pupil right there. You need this guy in your army for most configurations, so he's an A. The Primus, I'm still out on that guy. I'm definitely going to rate him a B. He's not bad, but I don't think he's I don't think you got to have him. Now, he's attacks in one of the formations, which we'll see. These guys you're going to see a lot of. These guys are definitely A's. I don't know about the Patriarch. I think he might be a little points heavy, but you're going to see a lot of these guys splashed in for sure. Just to get those psychic abilities. But remember, you can do the same thing with Tyranids. You can ally with Tyranids. Hell, you can ally with Guard and get the, you can get the Psyker that you can buy himself, or you can get the Psychic Brotherhood. They do all put their psychic powers into the pool. There's the warp charges. But remember, you can't cast on each other because you are allies of convenience. But it is one pool, and it doesn't matter about allies of convenience. Okay. The pure strain Genestealers are head and shoulders better than their Tyranid book cousins. These guys are the same points. They get an extra attack. They have a 5-up invulnerable. To upgrade to Scything Talons to basically get an extra attack, it's 1 point less. I like these guys. I think they're good. There's a couple of ways to get them to have assault grenades, but nothing super reliable on a game by game basis. Now, if you're playing in a tournament, you might see it happen. In a 66 round tournament, it might happen twice. 3-round tournament might happen once. But it's something to keep track of. They aren't bad. They are better than they've been before, but they are not a super win. I feel like they're a C as far as grades go. They're good, but they're super specialized, and it's not something that's an auto-include in every list. And I feel like that gets you up to that B grade level right there. The Aberrants, these guys are a C too. They're not completely useless. There's uses for them. Obviously, summoning these guys with free freaking hammers in the backfield off of psychic power, nobody wants that. Ain't nobody wants that. But taking them and having them run across the table probably isn't the wisest thing in the history of ever. They do have Feel No Pain. They might have a little bit of staying power depending on what psychic powers you get, but then you're going to have to go for specific builds and specific psychic power fishing, which I'm never a fan of these days, because the minute you don't get that, your plan goes out the window. You have a feel badsy. It's like Mike Tyson punched you in the face, and it's no fun anymore. And if you're not having fun, it's very hard to have fun with your opponent, I feel like. So there's that. I like these guys, but I don't feel like they're mission critical to the army. I might be wrong. Drop it, drop a comment. We'll do errors and omissions for surezies, but I'm just not super I'm not super high as a kite on these guys either. Chimera and Armored Sentinels, they're a fan favorite. We've seen these guys for years and many, many iterations. It's cool that they're in the book. I don't really need to grade them, I don't feel like, because we all know what they do and they have specific roles. They don't suck by any means. Scout Sentinels, very cool inclusion as well. Now, as far as the Goliath truck goes, I like this thing. I don't know why. It just looks cool. It reminds me of Total Recall, the first one with Arnold, not the second one with Colin Farrell. But if you start looking at his stats at the end of the day, it's basically like a little bit of a weak Chimera. It can't carry pure strain Genestealers or a Patriarch. Okay, that's fair. It can have the demo charges as a specific standalone upgrade. It's got this cool rugged construction special rule, but remember, it is open top, so you have to be super careful of that, because people can just pop this thing if it's like a target of opportunity. But again, if you got all these guys jumping out of the shadows up in people's faces, chances are that you can run a couple of these up the middle with some stuff and take objectives, or just hold things down. It's better to have a unit in a transport than not in a transport these days, because it gives you that extra layer of protection, so to speak. So I would say this is a solid C, just for no other reason than the fact that you're not always going to auto include this in every list. But it doesn't suck, like, at all. I think it's cool. The model looks cool. It's different, and we like that. It has a specific use, but it's not an auto include. Now, the Goliath Rock Crusher, I want to grade this thing a B, because first of all, it looks dope. I love the Death Roller mechanic. I love just everything about this particular model. The 75 points I feel like isn't bad. These things are basically like guided missiles. Now, they're not the end all be all, and it would be very hard to take out like something like a like a Land Raider or something super heavy armored, like a 14 or something. But the chances are low, rhinos and things you're not going to have as much of a problem with, because like I said, your average strength roll is a 10. You're going to get you're going to get through on it. You average, you glance at it right off the bat, and then you're stuck there. You're just kind of standing there. But if you can clip some other units on the way in, well, it's more of a straight line. Hey, more power to you. You did some work there. I like it. It's got the drill dozer blade. It's got the heavy mining laser, which is a 36-inch range las cannon. It works just like a vehicle, so you know how those work as far as firing. It's got some fire points, transport capacity of 6. It can take the Clarence Incinerator, which remember, it might not be that bad. You can replace it with that. It's a Torrent heavy flamer, so that's kind of cool. We don't see those very often. Or you can get the heavy seismic cannon, which does most of the work. It's that extra shot at 12 inches. I don't know what the specific, role of this will be or what you will see the most people running this as, but I tell you what, I want to find a way. This is just my hobby pipe dream. I want to field a bunch of these on the tabletop, and I just want to push them at people and just tank shock them. Herd them in the little patches of high concentration of models, and then either hit them with another one or come in with some cold ambush stuff and just rah, 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 rah. That's how I see me wanting to play this army. But, who knows if that's effective, but that's just what I want to do. Then you got the Lehman Russ Squadron. Now, very important thing to note here, folks, is it doesn't come with the battle cannon. Battle cannon will cost you 30 points. It comes with the, the Nova Eradicator Cannon, which is a large blast, strength 6, ignores cover. So it isn't completely useless, but it's not a battle cannon useful. You know what I mean? So this, obviously, a Lehman Russ. It's not an auto include, but it doesn't suck. I'm just going to give it a B because it's Lehman Russ. It isn't going to win you games. It isn't as good as it was in 3rd edition. I'm sorry. It's just not. Unless you can have access to the other variants like the Executioner, the Demolisher, or even the Punisher with Pasc on that bad boy, which you couldn't do because Cult. But whatever. Rock Grinders. Man, I want to grade these guys a B. But I know it's not an auto include in every list, but it's just too cool to not. Okay, now we've gotten to the formations, which will bring us into the attachments here shortly. The Subterranean. I don't think that's Subterranean. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. That's not how I would spell it. Well, maybe it's the English spelling, so we'll just say Subterranean Uprising. It's 0 to 1 Primus, 1 to 3 of the Hybrid Metamorphs. There's your tax I was talking about. 2 to 4 units of the Acolytes, and 0 to 3 of the Aberrants. This is basically your, what do they call that? The Demo Company. This is what you're going to see, the lowest common denominator of formation from this army, and I think you're going to see a lot of them, to be quite honest, because boom, it confers that infiltrate right off the bat, and now you're able to trigger those cold ambushes. The book doesn't give that to you, or excuse me, the detachment doesn't give that to you. This formation blanket gives it to all of these units right here. Now remember, if you have infiltrate, you'll see in the detachment, it confers some other special rules too. So this is a very strong mechanic that's leading up to the detachment. Time to rise up. When rolling on the ambush table for this formation, roll 2 dice instead of 1 and choose either of the results. Whoa, okay, so now you get double the chances to get those sweet rolls on the Colt formation, on the Colt ambush table that you might want, instead of just a single roll for any of these units. That's pretty cool. This is turning into a very solid bottom line foundation for formations and the Decurion or detachment itself. Then you got Meticulous Planner. If a unit has been joined by a promise, you can roll 3 dice instead of 1 rolling on the Colt ambush table. So it goes without saying, you might want to take the Primus here. He is situational, like I was saying, but in this role, I think he's probably worth it. You know what I mean? Then you've got the Deliverance Brood Surge, which is just basically 2 to 6 units of the Neophyte hybrids. But each unit must take a Goliath truck as a dedicated transport. They can begin the game embarked on their trucks. These units can disembark even if their vehicle moved at cruising speed, which normally isn't allowed, although they have to take a dangerous terrain test to do so. Basically, they're jumping off the back, which kind of makes sense, I suppose. It is open top. Each time a vehicle from this formation suffers cruise stun or cruise shaken, the result is ignored, even though the vehicle still loses a hull point. So it's a little bit better than the native rule for this. You have to roll a dice, so it's just basically ignored. Now remember, if there's a way to get these guys infiltrate, which I'm not sure there is, because it's over here, and this is a different formation. If they have infiltrate, things that infiltrate are allowed to infiltrate with their dedicated transports. I'm not saying you can with this formation, but it's just food for thought. The Demolition Claw is another formation. Now, I'm not sure how useful this one will be. It does give you tank hunters, And they can reroll the scatter dice when using the demo charge or cash demolition charges when embarked on the Goliath rock grinder. Now, it's also a way to get 2 to 3 units of rock grinders, but also you have to take 2 to 3 units of the hybrids. Now, these are not a dedicated transport for these guys, so keep that in mind as well. Very specific wording right there. Now, also, roll a dice each time a model throws a demo charge, because remember, these guys can get demo charges. It's open-topped, so they can just kind of throw it out the back. Or, excuse me, no, it has firing points. This is the rock grinder. They can or they use the one from the rock grinder, which is a free upgrade, actually. They can restock them on the one-use only stuff on a 4 or more. So this kind of basically drives around, just throws around Strength 8 AP2 templates. In theory, it's cool, and practicality on the tabletop and the competitive scene might not be that great, to be quite honest. So this is kind of a C formation, I feel like. And of course, you have to be equipped with all these demo charges, although this upgrade costs no points. So very cool stuff there. Brood Cycle is basically, I guess this is more of the demo company than the Subterranean Uprising. This is more of like a halvesy. This is more of a fullsy. It has a whole list of requirements here: the Icon Ward, Acolyte Hybrids, Neophyte Hybrids, Metamorphs, Pure Strains, and then optional Rock Grinders and Aberrats right there. But any non-vehicle unit in its formation within 6 inches of another unit, it adds 1 to both leadership and its weapon skill. Like I said, weapon skill pluses like candy in this book here. It's crazy. All units in its formation have the Furious Charge special roll for free. Cool, why not? Within 24 inches instead of 12 from the Icon Ward. In addition, the range of the Nexus Devotion spell is extended out within 24 inches as well. So very cool stuff here. Not sure it's worth the points, but this is a solid C formation as well. Not something that you're going to see a whole lot of, I don't feel like, but I think for the most part, a lot of competitive lists out there might be looking at subbing in some of these formations just to get that good stuff. Then there's the first curse, which is 1 Patriarch and 1 unit of Genestealers. You can roll on this chart here to get some really exciting abilities that we're all used to from the Genestealer book, like Feeder Tendrils, Preferred Enemy, Flesh Hooks, lets you charge through difficult terrain with no initiative penalty, or you roll a 6 and you get to choose the result you want. However, the only caveat is you gotta have 20 miles in this list. So it's situational. You might see a few of it to go fishing, but it's a solid C formation, I feel like. The Neophyte Cavalcade is a little bit of a different story. It's probably the cheapest one in here because you only need 2 units of Neophyte Hybrids, one Leman Russ Squadron, which is only 130 points, and 1 to 2 of the Sentinels, which aren't that many points at all. So like I said, it's probably the cheapest one in here, but they must take a Chimera as a dedicated transport. So that jacks up the points a little bit, but again, it's still cheaper compared to some of that other stuff. I mean, 20 Genestealer, well, actually no, that's 70, 70, 140, and 95. So this is probably the cheapest, to be honest. But anyways, let's take a look at its abilities. The formation's units of hybrids must start the game embarked within their transports. Vehicles of this formation have the Outflank special rule. Scout Sentinels from this formation instead gain a Cult Ambush special rule. So that's kind of cool to see. Very cool stuff there. They can be coming out and kung fu kicking things in the face, or just popping up in random spots, holding objectives, whatever. Devoted Crew, roll a dice each time a vehicle from this formation suffers crew stun or crew shaken results, and the 4 it's ignored, but you still lose the whole point. So it's basically the ability from the Goliath vehicles conferred over, not for free, for a 4-up. Again, situational, probably a solid C formation. Then there's the Dotting Throng, which is 1 Magus, or 0 to 1 Magnus, and 3 to 6 of either the Neophytes or the Acolytes. Units from this formation must have the Zealot special rule within 12 of a friendly Magus. Furthermore, a unit is actually joined can re-roll failed to roll hits in every run of close combat, not just the first. So Zealot on crack, pretty cool stuff there. I feel like it's probably better if you take the Acolytes instead of the Neophytes, but we'll see how that all sorts out. The Magus targets a Neophyte Hybrid or Acolyte Hybrid unit from this formation with a Blessing, Psychic Power, he can re-roll the Psychic test. Remember, these guys are going to be getting some Psychic Powers. They're going to be doing the heavy lift, and things like, stuff out of Biomancy can be pretty good. Even some of the powers out of the Broodmine are pretty solid, and when you start throwing it around on all these multiple units, it can get dicey for sure for your enemies. Then you got the Brood Coven, which is all those guys that come in their own box, which I think is actually called the Brood Coven. Go figure. So it's got basically one of each is the formation. It confers fleet, counterattack, preferred enemy from each of those guys, while the relevant models from the formation is still alive. They can join friendly units, but they have to, if they lead, they have to leave together, or whoever's, you know, still alive kind of type deal there. So there's really interesting abilities here. Getting counterattack for free is good. Getting preferred enemy for free is good. Throwing these guys in big blocks of 20 confers a lot of things. Remember, the Patriarch confers out 12-inch Fearless, right? And getting counterattack is never bad if you get assaulted. And then the preferred enemy is just going to let you slice through stuff when you're already weapon skill +1 and probably strength +1 for free years charge and all sorts of things, man. This really starts stacking up. Okay, so there's all the formations. We've pretty much done all the work building this house for the Genestealer Cult, but we need to put the roof on it, and the roof over here is the Genestealer Cult Insurrection Detachment. This is a really interesting one. So you got your core, you got your auxiliary, you got your command. Your cores are 1 to 6, so really just one right here, which we talked about these a lot already. Then you got your auxiliaries, which are 1 plus right here. So you got to grab one of these, you got to grab one of these, and then you can have your commands, which are, oh, excuse me, I said it backwards. So you can have one of these, but you have to have one of the formations that we just talked about, which really isn't that bad, because I think a lot of people are going to take the subterranean or uprising and then kind of pick from here. And this is kind of the way where you're going to want to go. This is how you pick. If you're taking a detachment, I feel like right here is kind of the flow chart of, okay, well now I want to field a lot of guardsmen dudes. I'm going to go with, you know, this one. Or, well, maybe I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I want a little bit of everything. That's your brood cycle right here. So it kind of gives you the idea of middle of the road or a little bit more dedicated to kind of like the whole guardsman kind of feel. And that would be the Neophyte Cavalcade. Okay, so once you take all that, obviously I feel like a no-brainer right here is the Subterranean Uprising. Those, like I said, the Metamorphs aren't that great, but getting the abilities from this right here and those Acolyte hybrids are super good. And you already have a couple other squads of it from right here. Or, you know, you could just take these guys as a formation. But let's talk about the benefits. So the Cult Father, the Warlord traits, you can re-roll if you choose a Patriarch from this detachment as your Warlord. So keep that in mind. You need to get over here and grab you a Patriarch. If you take the Patriarch, you can re-roll in the Warlord traits table. We talked about that. There's some really good ones. Uprising Generations in the Making. So this confers Infiltrate to all units in the detachment that are non-vehicle, which allows you to start that whole cycle of the Cult Ambush. So you can be like, all right, what am I really going to put on the table? What am I going to keep in reserve? Kind of start planning out your strategy from there. If they already had it, now they get the Shrouded special rule the first game turn. So that's kind of cool. So now you're starting to have a little bit more resiliency for those things that already had it. Remember, you can infiltrate. Even if you infiltrate on the board, now you're infiltrating. You even get to make a scout move. That's pretty cool. You would get Shrouded as well. So you could work your way into terrain, get the bonus from that, get the bonus from Shrouded. Maybe it's Knife Fight, get that stealth. You start working these cover saves, you really start making these guys resilient, and that's what you have to do, because this really is kind of a paper tiger army. When everything's got like a 5-up save across the board for the most part, that can get a little dicey. They're almost like Harlequins, but not quite as fast, but they got a lot of tricks. I feel like they got more tricks than the Harlequins. If the Harlequins can disappear and reappear using some sort of web way, kind of like these mechanics in here, I feel like that would be a much more popular army than it is currently. Or much more played. I'm sure it's a popular army, just speaking from experience. Then Numbers Beyond Counting. This is the thing where if you bounce off the board using your Disappearance to Shadow special ability to go into Ongoing Reserve to come back on, when you come back on, you would get an extra D6 models to the unit. Note, it says models, not wounds. So if you got stuff that has multiple wounds, like those weapon teams, hey, grab them back. Get those extra points. Some of those things are like 25 points. Why would you not grab them back? You know what I'm saying? So that's really cool. So it gives you some bonuses here for how to play this with the detachment, which I think is solid. This is a good B detachment. It's It's not an auto take, but when you take it, it's got enough, I guess, ass, for lack of a better word. It's got enough back end to really kind of hold the line and give you all the tools you need to succeed. Now, granted, it's not going to put you over the top. It's no free transports or free weapon upgrades or anything like that, like some of the other ones get, but it's also not, you know, as bad as some of the other ones out there that you really don't get anything. It doesn't give you scoring, but hey, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Now, this pairs good with a lot of different things too. Like I said, you can take Flying Hive Tyrants to get the extra psychic dice. You can pair with Guard to get, you know, all sorts of crazy stuff from, you know, Psychic Brotherhoods, standalone Psychers, the Wyverns, you know, even Pass. Just take a standard CAD, grab Pass, grab, you know, some Wyverns or something like that. Keep them in the middle. That's your firepower. And then if they come near you, you're going to rip them to shreds, call ambushing all over the place, going after objectives and things. This is a very unpredictable army, but it works very well with that whole hammer and anvil kind of feel. You have to have something still anchoring your center or still, you know, on the table to threaten the enemy and make him come after you, or make him be cognizant of, oh, not only do I have to deal with this threat right here, but I also have to deal with these guys that might come in over here, might come in over here, might go after this objective, might do this, might do that. These guys have the potential to run Eldar to the ground, to run Eldar jet bikes to the ground. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here that can work well when comboed with other things, even comboed with itself. But it's a lot of upkeep, it's a lot of bookkeeping. It's very similar to almost to Adeptus Mechanicus books, both of those books, in you know, level of bookkeeping. So use your data cards, use your things, you know, write out your cards. If you didn't see the video on making game aids, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, writing stuff out, visual reminders on the tabletop to help you remember what to do when, what bonus, what squad has when, you know, within a radius of this guy. Because like I said, you don't want to bog down your turn with your opponent or give them a feel bad or anything like that as well. So that's, like I said, this one went long. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I knew it was going to be a lot of material, but it all, as we went, it all built on itself. So I didn't want to lose that momentum there and then, you know, come back and be like, all right, well, we stopped here, but let's talk about this. Remember last week when I said this? It was just worth it to just kind of plow through it, I feel like, and get it all done and out of the way. Now, if we got any errors, we got any omissions, you know, you feel like you have something to add about, you know, a particular stratagem, or I misspoke, or you don't like the way I speak, maybe I said something funny, I'm from the South, what can I say? You know, drop it in the comments there. We'll definitely address it as it comes up. But like I said, key points, we talked about that already. There's a lot of stuff in here that can do a lot of work with together and separately with allies as well. So thanks for watching, y'all. Enjoy the new book.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. Thelongwar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.